Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, very glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've got three important martinis for you today: good, bad, and crazy. And Jim, let's start with the good. And so many times we have to shape and mold the good to fit the good martini. This is not one of those days. Yesterday, under beautiful, clear blue skies, officially about 290,000 people went to the Washington, D.C. Mall to show their support for Israel. A great turnout. Seemed like to be a very positive atmosphere, somber tones at times, obviously, given what the nation of Israel has been through. But I think there was kind of a cathartic sense that just everybody being together was good. Having as many people as possible show support for Israel was good. And as I said in our opening email today, it was just a beautiful contrast of peaceful, positive, resolve, kindness, lots of kindness towards police officers that I'm hearing anecdotally, as opposed to the graffiti, angry, hateful, constantly scuffling with police that we're seeing in the protests on the other side. So obviously, the conflict goes on. It's been going on for a very long time. But I think yesterday was a good day.
Not only was it a good day, Greg, you and I taped Three Martini Lunch, then I taped Editors. And because my teenagers need an Uber driver all afternoon long after school, there was just not a way I was going to be able to get into D.C. And then come back into it. People were apparently leaving like really early in the morning to get there to the mall. The people thought this was going to be, knowing that this was going to be a very popular event. So I was watching the live stream, and it was incredible. And I talk in today's Morning Jolt a bit. Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, gave a great speech. You kind of expect him to give a great speech. Chuck Schumer, whatever else you think of him, he's always been a friend to Israel. You expect him to give a great speech. I did not expect a great speech from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, nor from actress and activist Deborah Messing, who I'm sure many listeners have probably, grinded their teeth about for many times over the years. But her speech was moving. It was just very great. And she said, "We are praying for an IDF victory." Not what you would have expected from I think some of these voices. And it was just great to hear people who are indisputable, liberal, progressive Democrats standing up and saying, we're absolutely with Israel. There is no justification for what Hamas did. The current offensive against Hamas is necessary and justified. And that, yes, we want to see the people of Palestine freed from the terror of Hamas, free to choose their own leaders, and free to live in peace alongside Israel. But that can't happen until the job is done. And it was just, like there was music, there were testimonials from family members of the hostages. As you said, certain portions of this were just very moving. And it was just so good. Like, because the news spotlights that which is dramatic. Look, the protests against Israel, and what I would argue are, functionally pro-Hamas protests. I know some people, some attendees would insist otherwise. They're awful to see. We saw the jokes about killing hipsters in the desert. Like, people who really hate Israel. They hate everybody in Israel, including the women and children and senior citizens, and totally believe Israel. Like, that's horrifying. It's really, like, as I wrote today, we had the horror of the massacre, and then we had the moral insult on top of it, contending that the Israelis somehow had this coming, or that they somehow deserved this, as if any human being could ever deserve anything like this. And we've seen it since then. And then since then, it's just been piled on top of it, that idea that somehow the IDF is uniquely wrong in the history of war because there are civilian casualties. There are always civilian casualties in war. That's one of the reasons we're supposed to try to avoid war. It's always a mass production of human suffering. But sometimes it's unavoidable. Like when somebody comes, crashes through a wall with bulldozers and murders about 1,200 of your citizens. You don't have a choice. You're at war. The question then is, how do you want to handle it? And as I began yesterday's Morning Jolt, I'd said to people, what do you want is the IDF to do when there are Hamas operatives operating underneath a hospital? I think a lot of people, if you load them up with sodium pentothal, they'd say nothing. Except that's not an option for Israel. That's telling Israel they have to live with greater risk of another massacre some other day. So anyway, it was just great to see. It was inspiring. It was really about the best I have felt for any public demonstration in a long time. Now, look, maybe this will fade. Maybe at some point people will disappoint us. Maybe you'll see people getting wobbly on their support for Israel. But just for one day, it was great. It was huge turnout. And I think it should be a very clear signal to everybody in the White House, Capitol Hill, just the broader policy community, that, yeah, there might be some anonymous State Department staffers who are upset about this, but there are 290,000 people who came out in cold weather to demonstrate, hey, we got to stand by Israel through thick and thin.
The only thing I would disagree, Jim, is that it was cold weather as a Michigander. But other than that, I agree.
For us squishes from New Jersey who spend a lot of time in South Carolina, that's cool.
There you go. Yeah, anytime you got a rally that proudly waves American flags and has the national anthem, it's usually a pretty good sign, as opposed to the footage we saw from, I think it was New York City last week, just like a day before Veterans Day, where the guy was climbing the street pole and ripping down American flags from the Palestinian protest or pro-Hamas protest. It's not that there weren't some issues yesterday. It turns out that there were, I think, just under 1,000 folks from Michigan, Jewish folks from Michigan, who flew into D.C. They had chartered buses to take them to the mall. And it turns out that once some of the drivers from this company figured out who they would be driving, they did a sick out yesterday. And so the buses never showed up, and some of these people never made it to the mall, which is disgusting. I've not seen which company that is, but I'm sure it'll get out eventually. Jim, I'll let you just kind of sit in silence unless you want to comment on this. I found out this morning that this did not make the A section in the Washington Post, but it did make the front page of the Metro section. I'm not sure what led to that editorial decision. And we also found out yesterday that Biden is unfreezing $10 billion in energy assistance to Iran, that Iraq can pay Iran for the electricity it gets. But
I'm sure there just weren't enough people there to make it newsworthy.
Well, it's like the March for Life, that's always like a below the fold A25 story, depending on how many people show up. But this is not an annual event. What happened yesterday. So, but we're leading with it. So that's really what matters. All right, let's talk about our fantastic sponsor for the day. And that is 4Patriots, makers of many, many fine products, including the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It's got more power than before. It also has new expandable capability for even more power, so it charges more devices for longer in a blackout. So it's even better than before. Also, the Patriot Power Generator keeps your fridge going, your freezer, your medical devices, and a whole lot more. It comes ready to use, and it never needs gas, which means you save money because it comes with a solar panel. It's fume-free, it's silent, and it's safe. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. So visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone, and to get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on the opposite coast, we have the APEC Summit. We talked a couple of days ago about San Francisco and their sudden ability to not only clean up the city, but find the money in the existing budget to clean it up, which ought to make the year-round residents of San Francisco really excited about the leadership they're getting in town. But now we dig into some of the actual components of this summit, and particularly U.S.-China relations. Among other things, according to Business Insider, Biden and President Xi will agree to limit AI, artificial intelligence use in the systems that control and deploy nuclear weapons, as well as the technology's use in autonomous weapon systems such as drones. Now, Fox News picked up on this story and interviewed some experts who basically made two key points. First of all, it's kind of dumb for the United States to do this now because China's way behind us on AI capabilities. So we're basically surrendering a strategic advantage in this area while China's obviously getting more aggressive on the international stage. And secondly, and probably more significant to the conversation, is that China won't honor anything that you sign. So I'm not sure what the point is in kind of unilaterally limiting yourself. Now, you definitely want AI contained because in the wrong hands, it could do a tremendous amount of damage, particularly in terms of military might in a rogue state and so forth. But Jim, legitimate criticism here of the Biden administration, or are they trying to get ahead of the eight ball here?
Now, it's a legitimate criticism. The favorite lip president in our lifetimes, Ronald Reagan, had said, discussing his negotiations with the Soviets, trust but verify, which was there was a Russian expression that basically echoed that. If we could verify that the Chinese were going to keep this promise, I could see some value in this. I could see some value in other things, but the other problem is that we have a long history of previous administrations, including the Obama administration, signing agreements with China to say, not militarize the South China Sea, and then China just ignores what they said in their promises. They just break their promises, they go right ahead, knowing that there isn't any consequence, or there's unlikely to be any serious consequence for breaking their promise. So that's a very big problem here. When you say, let's not use AI in connection to nukes and drones, I don't know about you, I can hear James Cameron saying, yes, and apparently there was some woman named Sarah Connor who said this was a really good idea. Like AI is this new and strange thing that even the creators are like, boy, we just have no idea what it's going to do. And it just feels like the sort of thing you would want to be very wary about attaching it to anything that has lethal force, whether it's security drones that are I know, and I've talked about how my older teenager studies this stuff and says that everything I worry about from Terminator and Skynet is ridiculous, that you'd have to program it into the AI to have the desire to kill and things like that. My teenager knows a lot more than I do, but don't tell him I said that. But there's kind of that sense, this seems like something you'd want to be very cautious about. Particularly, you want to be very cautious about anything involving nuclear weapons. You want to be very cautious about anything involving lethal military force. And the idea of taking some degree of control out of the hands of human beings, as flawed as they are, and putting into the hands of an AI, there's a reason that frightens us. If it would work, if I felt like, this is going to work, okay, great. In terms of the U.S. being ahead of China on AI, I believe that, but I also, you never know when they're going to have some breakthrough. Also, how 100% sure are we that they're not, that we know exactly what level they're at? So I look, and I just kind of in general, this thinking about this summit in San Francisco, I guess all of the things being equal, I'd rather have the US president and the dictator of China talking regularly than not talking. I do know that for a long time, the Biden administration was basically begging for these sorts of face-to-face meetings, and they weren't getting it. Apparently, the plan is to establish military-to-military kind of a hotline thing. I guess that's fine. But I think it was Josh Rogan, somebody over there had said something like, the real worry isn't that the idea that the U.S. and China are going to get into war accidentally. The real war is we're going to get into it deliberately because China keeps, making these militarily aggressive moves. So, I kind of look at this again, without any way of verifying that China is going to keep its word. What is the point of these negotiations? What is the point of just exchanging? We'll make concessions and they'll give us promises that it appears, based on past history, Xi Xinping has no interest in keeping.
You mentioned some of the other agreements that they've blatantly violated, like expansion in the South China Sea. The Trump administration repeatedly pressed China to stop sending the ingredients to manufacture fentanyl to the Mexican drug cartels, but they don't stop doing it. And so their word is not good for much. So it's one of these situations where, you need to trust but verify. But another Reagan phrase, peace through strength, is also critical here in that sort of thing. Completely apropos of nothing, but I just noticed this in the Fox News story. One of the experts they interviewed for this story is from the Center for Advanced Preparedness and Threat Response Simulation, and then they put the acronym CAPTORS. I'm not sure that's the acronym you want to go with. Maybe sometimes you just don't need one.
Yeah, wrong time of day.
My goodness. I know everybody wants an acronym. Every piece of legislation in this town has to spell out something with the first letter of each word. And just sometimes it's just better to come up with a name and leave it alone. All right, Jim. While we hope that Biden and Xi can have, I guess, constructive talks, but Biden can project strength that would make Xi behave a little bit more. We almost came to actual blows a couple different times on Capitol Hill yesterday, which led to some fun on social media, but in the larger picture makes you probably shake your head quite a bit. Let's start on the Senate side, where there was a hearing involving the Teamsters president, Sean O'Brien. And this was a hearing chaired by Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, but it was time for the questioning from Republican Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin. Now, Markwayne Mullin spent many years in the military. He's allegedly trained in MMA, and you're wondering, what does this have to do with the Senate hearing? Oh, just wait. He also, remember, he was missing for a few days, helping Americans get out of Afghanistan. So this is a guy who's not afraid to get into a little bit of a scrape. And so he referred to some comments Mr. O'Brien, the Teamsters president, made disparagingly about him and decided to follow up on that.
Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution, every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down.
Okay.
You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can, no,
This is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing.
When the Marxist is the one who's not leaning towards violence, you know it's a strange day on Capitol Hill. So, Jim, obviously there was bad blood between these guys leading up to this. And over on the House side, Tim Burchett, congressman from Tennessee, was doing an interview with NPR when former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy walked by. And according to the narration from the NPR reporter, apparently McCarthy at least bumped into Burchett. Burchett says he was elbowed in the kidney area. At first, it seemed to be a joking response from Burchett, and then they started yelling, and Burchett called him a jerk, and McCarthy said he didn't hit him, but if he did, he would know it, because if he kidney punched him, you'd be down on the floor. So it's not exactly what you expect on Capitol Hill, but the union guy, O'Brien, looks like a big guy, kind of out of central casting for a union guy. His face kind of looks like a fist. Mullin's got this military and MMA training. I think Burchett and McCarthy would probably be the undercard here. Quite a day on the Hill.
I don't know about you, but I hear the subtext in Bernie Sanders' voice in that circumstance. How the hell did I end up the voice of reason here? And I think there is a valuable lesson. First of all, I can understand that sentiment that if you don't like this strutting and chest pounding and, oh, you want to throw down, that like if you actually let them throw down and someone gets beaten badly, that you'll see less challenges. You will see less people saying, let's take this outside, tough guy, And I actually do think there's actually a useful and valuable lesson. Sean O'Brien, the president of the Teamsters, is free to, it's a First Amendment right. And also it's not surprising that a union president would be critical of Senate Republican. And he's free to say, Markwayne Mullin, you stink, blah, blah, blah. I don't like your point. But when you start saying, you think you're so tough, like the moment you get into the let's throw down cowboy, the moment you kind of get into that, there's always the risk that he's actually going to take you up on that offer, that he's going to respond. Like there's going to be, if you take that step to be that, provocative and to imply or directly say, I ought to take you outside and we ought to settle this with our fists. Well, all right, like there's always a chance the guy's going to say, okay, let's do that. And that's what happened here. And it was kind of fascinating to see the degree to which O'Brien didn't want to back down. But I don't get the feeling like Markwayne Mullin looks like he could break just about anybody in half, including Sean O'Brien. But it reminded me of the controversy around Neera Tanden, who is currently working in the White House, but I think Biden wanted to make her the nominee to lead the Office of Management and Budget. And Neera Tanden, liberal progressive activist for a long time, had said a lot of snotty things about Republican senators, including, I believe it was Susan Collins of Maine. Well, when you make a lot of snotty comments about Republican senators, and then you need to be confirmed in a 50-50 Senate, that puts you in a tough spot because you can't really expect Susan Collins to say, sure, I'll let bygones be bygones. I'll make you the next head of OMB. Never mind that you called me a duty head or whatever the heck it was. Susan Collins is under no obligation to that. And if you do, Twitter has everybody on Capitol Hill, going back to the founding fathers, has had beefs with each other. But most of the time, when you express that beef, I'd like to take that guy outside. I'd give him a knuckle sandwich. That tends to just be whoever's within earshot. And now, thanks to the magical world of social media and Twitter, you get really angry at somebody, You vent your spleen, and the whole world gets to see it. And even if you want to take it back, chances are somebody took a screenshot. So, here, I suspect Sean O'Brien never thought he'd be at a hearing with Markwayne Mullin where Markwayne Mullin would be like, oh, you want to throw down? Let's throw down. I'm right here. Let's go do it, And so it's one of those things where he would be better off if next time he felt like punching somebody, he just muttered it to himself and he didn't put it up on Twitter for the whole wide world to see. Similarly, Neeran Taradan might have been the OMB director if she had, hesitated from doing that, recognizing someday I'm going to want to be in a government job and I might need Senate confirmation. So if I'm going to criticize a senator, I better keep it in bounds. There's always a chance somebody's going to take it personally. And if you go around strutting about how tough you are and how you could beat the hell out of anybody, well, you never know the day somebody might come along and say, okay, let's see if you can cash that check.
I don't know how busy Michael Buffer is these days. Maybe they can hire him on Capitol Hill and just whenever the moment presents itself, he can just step right up. I was going to play it, but I figured it was probably trademarked somehow, so didn't want to get sued. Okay. But just let's get ready to rumble. Mullin versus O'Brien. But not the way Congress was designed, although, there was the infamous caning incident a few years before the Civil War. And of course, until Dick Cheney, we only had one vice president that had actually shot someone. But Dick Cheney didn't do it on purpose. Let's
go hunting.
We should point that out. Aaron Burr, however, very much on purpose. Anyway, Jim, quite a day. We have covered the gamut today. We'll do it again tomorrow. See you then.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to our podcast if you don't already, and please tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us both on X. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Wednesday. Join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.